You're aware that on Tuesday, February 12th, 2013, I visited along with congressional staff, the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. And we have 6,500 acres there. It's very nice that you point out what you did in Florida and Brooksville in 2012. Well, it was done in 2015. But I was there, asked to see if we could come up with some plans to do something. I saw office buildings with vines growing over them, empty buildings, and then today the staff reported to me on the huge number of vacant buildings that still exist. I've never seen a plan to do anything about that. I sent the staff out to see the condition. I didn't get to go. Have you got that little video? I haven't seen it yet, so let's see what's there. Okay. That one's empty. Well, that looks pretty good. That one's empty. That one's empty. Yep. Nobody there. Well, that looks pretty good. That's well-utilized federal property. This is one I saw. There's several of these buildings, structures, more. Kind of goes on and on. Have you been out there, Undersecretary?
Yes, sir. As a matter of fact, along with the administrator for the Agriculture Research
This is the
Service.
condition of our federal properties. Looking pretty good, eh? I hadn't seen it in 3 years. I think we made a lot of progress, unfortunately in the wrong direction. Look at this, members. And this is very valuable. Now, Brooksville, I've been in real estate. Maybe you could get $5,000 an acre. This is worth an incredible amount of money. Not that it has to be commercially developed, that may be well-suited, that part of it is a park or a natural preserve. But this is disgraceful that we have federal properties and around the country, and the Department of Agriculture, again, went out there, visited, requested that we come up with a proposal. If there are impediments, we need to know if there's a plan. It's just not acceptable. I'm sorry. Mr. Gelber, one of the things that we came up with was we proposed, and actually one of the predecessors in GSA's, I think, public buildings officials, we'd said there are thousands of people who deal with disposing. They're professionals disposing or evaluating real estate and property and its best use and what you can do with it. And I asked GSA to come up with some sort of a way to bring those folks in, look at properties that we have, and then we could utilize their talents to look at what we had and come up with recommendations. We started a Federal Real Property Council as a result of that. Are you aware of that?
Yes, sir.
And does it still exist?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, I met with the members about a year after they'd been put together for that purpose, and very few, just a few $1 million worth of properties, a handful of properties had actually been handled. Do you know the status of the progress of that?
It's a continuing effort, sir.
Yeah, but it's a very, I mean, it's pitiful, the response. And I have people that were involved in disposing of all of the S&L properties and things, huge numbers of properties, a great talent on that, and they tell me, you know, there's inertia in GSA and the federal government. You've seen the bill that's been proposed, and I think most of you, a couple of you commented, this is what we need to do. This pretty much codifies what we tried to get started, which you could do administratively. Yes, there are some impediments, but no. Again, the efforts have not come to fruition like we would like to see. Mr. Wise, you've done some inventories, I guess, of public buildings, but we really don't have a complete inventory of federal buildings that are vacant, do we?
No, sir, we don't.
No. And some of the worst offenders are the Department of Defense, Well, actually, VA, we have a pretty good inventory. I saw that, but it's pages and pages of vacant properties. Some of you may have cited the difficulty with those properties because sometimes they're in a complex or sometimes they're in the Rust Belt where we no longer have the veterans to occupy the medical facilities, for example. Is that correct?
That can be an issue for sure.
Yes.
We talked about that in I think past hearings, and we mentioned in our statement for the record today that you occasionally, and maybe more than occasionally, run into problems when you have a property that's located, a building on a closed campus. It will draw a limited amount of interest just because the accessibility is an issue.
But one, we don't have an inventory of vacant federal properties or underutilized federal properties. That's a given. Two, we don't know the condition even of the properties we have, and I think you found that in your evaluation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That gets back to an issue that we've talked about in a number of our reports, and that's the problem dealing with the overall database. And I think that many of the problems we talk about when it comes to the federal real property management really kind of circle back to that foundational issue, which is there are still problems with having a clearly accurate and comprehensive real property database. I know that OMB and GSA have been working hard to try to improve that, but we have still found continuing issues with how agencies report the data as it cycles back up into the larger database. And so that's a continuing problem, meaning that for federal real property managers, if you don't really know what you've got and what condition it's in, then how do you make rational management decisions?
Mm-hmm. Well, I heard one of the things that is cited by the administration is they need more money for repairs and for also this process. But aren't there also the opportunities for public-private partnerships where the capital can be provided by the private sector who acquires the property? Mr. Wise?
We did a recent report on P3 and found that while P3s have been very common in the infrastructure world, especially when it comes to transportation and highways, that sort of thing, we did not find many, if any, examples, very few examples of anything going on in the real property world. Well, theoretically, I think it certainly is a possibility, but we haven't found it to be a reality at this point to any great extent.
Again, it depends on how you define it. The Trump Hotel, that's a public-private partnership. We're losing $6 million. We had a federal government controlling the building, losing about $6 to $8 million a year, half the square footage, 400,000 square feet, half of it empty. A newer annex behind, empty for 15 years. Anybody in the private sector would never let that happen. We did turn it over. We will now be getting a monthly revenue and a percentage, I think a gross or whatever the deal is, turning that around. That's an example. Maybe it isn't a public-private partnership, but we have a public-public partnership where we turn the property at the Miami-Dade court, or the federal courthouse in Miami, turned over to a state institution, a college. $1.5 million to keep empty, we'll no longer do that. I mean, we can look for these opportunities, but it's painful and it takes so long. The property in Miami, again, we just turned over this May, is almost a decade. And going back and forth and up and down. I've worked on just some of the ones we outlined in our report, which is now many years old, and we're resolving them. The Cotton Exchange has gone on, and that was cited here. Undersecretary Parham cited the possibility of the Department of Agriculture with university. But there are opportunities because we're sitting on incredible federal assets, all of them costing billions. Hell, we could, excuse me, I won't say that. Heck, we can take the income, the revenue, just from these properties and turn it over. They say Congress isn't funding. Well, the opportunities are there with public-private partnership, public-public partnership, and also assets, maximizing them and getting a return. We've actually made money tearing down, since our hearing at the Cape, some of the buildings and selling some of the unused material for scrap, which we've made money and cut our cost of maintenance and security because the building's down. I mean, it just goes on and on. Nobody in the federal government seems to be very creative in this. There have been some attempts by OMB in expanding, again, the number of square feet. And you told me you're targeting now 61 million square feet for the future. Is that?
Yes, sir. For 16 through 20, 61 million square feet of just office and warehouse space, because that we feel is really where significant savings are.
And then the President's initiative, which I support, better utilization of existing space. Been working with you on the FTC building, consolidation of that into the Department of Commerce building, and then utilization of the old FTC building, because the National Gallery rents space, and you have a huge amount of rental space with the FTC. With the, just a question, with FTC in the new lease space, it's the Constitution building, I believe, that lease that GSA had gotten into was a million square feet, and the lease was botched, the lease acquisition was botched, as I recall, and the courts ordered GSA to honor the lease, which moved part of the FTC in. And that's several years back now. That lease expires, and I would like to see what we could do in consolidating some of that space in the Constitution building, along with the existing space that's being utilized in the old FTC building, into the Department of Commerce, of which we're renovating 1 million square feet, but there are no final plans for about 200,000+ square feet where we could have a consolidation. And particularly if you could report back to me to eliminating some of the duplicate spaces that are utilized in the buildings, child care. One important one is data centers, auditorium, and conference space. I would appreciate it, and I'll ask the staff to follow up with a specific line of questionings. Can you help us, Mr. Gelber?
Yes, we'd be happy to work with your staff on that
Thank you.
matter.
Thank you. I have other members. Did you want to go next, Mr. DeSalegna?